Alrighty, so my background is architecture, just to give you a little bit of background about myself. And so I've spent majority of my career prior to IncentiFind implementing sustainable measures on some of the most complex assets. It started off at Johnson Space Center, NASA Johnson Space Center, south of Houston here, where we're headquartered. And then I went to work in one of a kind, biohazardous safety laboratories, CGMP or pharmaceutical laboratories. After that, I also worked in federal courthouse systems, the oil and gas industry, Department of Defense, and many other, like I said, complex assets. I was always able to implement sustainable measures, and this could be from a wide variety of things. I might have helped the owner obtain, LEED Gold, LEED Silver, or if we couldn't achieve those certifications just because the complexity of the asset, we certainly used it as a goal that we would try and achieve. So anyways, that led me to found IncentiFind. You can see we're 4 years old, based here in Houston, Texas, but we are considered one of the fastest growing real estate tech startups based out of Texas. So we're pretty proud about that. You'll see the niche that we're filling is very necessary, hence why you're here today and why our customer and usage has grown so much. We do serve all 50 states. I'm going to talk about how our database coalesces real estate incentives from every single state here in the US. We are now also in Canada. If you have assets or customers or clients in Canada, we certainly can help there too. No, we have not jumped across the pond or gone south of the border. We get asked that all the time. It's certainly in our roadmap, but not as of yet. We still stand as the only database for these types of real estate incentives. We get compared to Desire a lot. The DSIRE website, if you're not familiar with it, it's an old national database. It's mostly geared around renewables and energy efficiency. To give you a quick comparison, they were defunded back in 2017. You can see that's when we started. Now, through grant donations, folks can try to help maintain that database of incentives. In its heyday, Desire maybe housed about 2,000 incentives. And if you've ever used it, it's quite difficult to use. You can certainly throw in a zip code and get a list of incentives completely for free, but you have to click on the links. A lot of the times the data is not upkept. It's very hard to upkeep data when you just have, grant dollars here and there being tossed, trying to maintain all of these incentives offered from 5 levels of government across 50 states. Further, it's really tough to know, well, what are you exactly eligible for, right? You just get a list of incentives. It doesn't tell you how it's eligible to your asset. It's not easily, the filters aren't easy to use. So you're going to see here how at IncentiFind, using a 2-minute survey about your asset, whether it's existing or, ground up, we can match you to, incentives housed in our database, offered from 5 levels of government and across all 50 states. Real quick, I do want to mention that we do not work in the US territories. We do get asked that a lot. Incentives just don't operate the same there. We find it to be a very low success rate, and we don't like getting our customers excited about incentives that we cannot sort of guarantee, if you will, a good experience or that we can help capture. So we just have a tendency to stay away from the US territories. All righty. You heard me say 5 levels of government. So I want you to look at the right-hand side of your screen. We house incentives from federal, state, county, city, and utility level governments. When we say utility, we're talking gas, electric, and water utilities. With these incentives that are offered, we further can quickly identify Which incentives are eligible to a property owner or a building owner, a developer? Yes, this can be for a developer who plans to dispose of the asset within either 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Depending on how long that developer plans to keep the asset, we can even identify those types of incentives. We even have tenant focused incentives. We get asked that a lot as well. And the answer is yes, we've got those too. Here's a flavor of what is in our database. Again, this is just kind of high level. It is also on our website, so you don't have to memorize this if you don't want to. This is last year's count. I imagine we'll double this year in our count just based on the way things are already trending when we were looking at the analytics in January. You can see first and foremost, our database is bifurcated. There's a new construction side of the house and an existing building. If you're not familiar with incentives, I can tell you that, incentives offered for new construction are nothing like those that are offered from existing buildings. Further, the requirements for eligibility and capturing the incentives are night and day different. Nothing you need to memorize, but you can lean on IncentiFind to make sure you navigate all of those appropriate requirements so that you can obtain those incentives. The next thing to look at is our big, broad, what we call our big, broad categories. Here at IncentiFind, another differentiator for us is not only that we house these incentives across 5 levels of government, all 50 states, but we can look at any asset, again, new or existing, holistically. In other words, how it's actually being designed and constructed or upgraded, right? So we're going to look at all of the energy systems. What do I mean when I say that? I'm talking about indoor, outdoor, building envelope. That is the roof. That's the insulation. That's the windows. It could be load management programs, demand response, generator programs. Maybe it's the lighting in the parking garage. Maybe it's street lighting. It is all energy systems. Further, we house renewables. Yes, it's mostly going to be in solar, but we do have geothermal and the like. Lastly, we have water conservation. This is indoor and outdoor as well. So if you are in a drought-prone state, there are some incredibly lucrative incentive programs offered for water conservation. And we can tell you that what we're seeing, a major trend we're seeing is that owners are, yes, they're continue to be hyper-focused on energy efficiency as part of their ongoing upgrades. It does help to reduce the operating expenditure of buildings, right? And it also helps to attract and retain tenants, but it's kind of, 2 birds, 1 stone, is that it takes a lot of energy to pump water through buildings, right? So by addressing water conservation, they can also tap into more energy efficiency in their buildings. So we're seeing a lot of owners wanting to look at both energy efficiency and water conservation. After we look at your building holistically, energy efficiency, renewables were applicable, and water conservation, notice we can look at the land that the asset sits on. Below, we've listed just a few examples. No, this is not all encompassing of our other category, if you will. But this is going to be great for your property owners and developers. No, obviously not applicable to your tenants. But we can identify brownfield development incentives, electric vehicle charge stations, certifications such as Green Globes, LEED. We do get asked about the well building standard a lot. We haven't seen that many incentives, but I think it's just because the program's so new. We could see them on the near horizon. We've got opportunity zone, new market tax credit, PACE eligible areas. Folks, for the PACE eligible areas, this is an innovative financing mechanism that is specific to financing projects or real estate projects that encompass energy efficient or water conserving upgrades or are putting solar on their properties. So we've seen a lot of owners interested in understanding these PACE loans and where they're eligible. They're not eligible in all 50 states. So we can help identify that as well. Resilience is a new category that we are seeing emerge. So this could be flood mitigation, fireproofing, flood proofing, hurricane proofing, you name it. So, this is a fantastic category that is emerging. We're helping cities to pilot new resilience incentives. And then smart building technology, that is another area that is massively emerging as well. So we'll continue to look to work with cities and local governments to pilot their new smart building technology incentives. So again, just a flavor of what's in our database. Let's talk about the incentive types, okay? We get that asked this a lot too. We house tax incentives. This could be sales tax, property tax, you name it. Grants. A grant program could be like, for example, I know in California, we recently helped a multifamily building developer obtain about a $25,000 grant program to pay for her recycling chute in her multifamily building. This grant program didn't live on a website. It was on somebody's desk. Our research team was able to find that, put it into our database. When the developer popped in her 2-minute survey about her new multifamily asset, we were able to pair her with that. So we've got grant programs that are also pretty exciting. Fee waivers, if you're addressing any sort of affordable housing, infill, or other types of housing, we've seen some great fee waivers available to our developers. Rebate programs, a lot of folks are familiar with these. These are mostly going to be at your utility level. They're cash reimbursements. So the second you or your developer or your building owner or tenant are done installing the eligible equipment, they could take advantage of a rebate program that will pay them cash within year one after that installment of the eligible equipment. And then build credits. We mostly see this in the solar area. So for installing solar, you could see a build credit back on the particular bill payer's electric bill for the production of solar on a property. So again, just a quick little flavor there. If there's anything you take away from IncentiFind today, I think this slide really does a great job of covering it. So far, like I said, we are the only ones to really bridge the gap in connecting any type of construction project to incentives. To give you a flavor of our volume at a national scale, it's about 25,000 projects to 20 billion in cash reimbursements. That's not inclusive of tax incentives, right? This is mostly just on the utility cash reimbursements front. And we do this using a 2-minute survey. You're going to see that here in a second. All righty, let's keep going. Who uses IncentiFind? Just know that the lending, and that we work a lot with the lending industry. But really, I think for today's webinar, most of you guys are going to come from the AEC industry. That's architecture, engineering, and sustainability, or general contractors. We are a great value add, and no, you do not absorb the fee for our product and service, which you'll see here in a second. You typically just pass that along to your client. So a lot of firms like working with IncentiFind because we are a great value add with a low time commitment and no fee assessed to the firm. For any of you joining from the corporate real estate side, we do work with corporations who have large portfolios of assets. You are welcome to use us if maybe you have stepped up your corporate commitments to energy efficiency or renewables or water conservation. We are a great tool to help identify what cost-saving incentives are out there as you achieve and attain those new corporate commitments or goals. We also work with a lot of facility maintenance groups. If you've got upcoming capital improvement plans, like I know we're working with one corporation in their facility or real estate group right now. They've got about 500 locations that they would like to submit to IncentiFind so that we can help them understand, is it only the lighting full fixture change out that they are able to afford for their upcoming 36-month capital improvement planning? Or through the cost savings we identify, can they also afford controls? Maybe an HVAC upgrade, maybe a chiller upgrade, we are a fantastic exercise for those kinds of conversations as well. I think the why use IncentiFind, honestly, folks, I think a lot of you know it because you're here today. But if you want to try to find incentives just on Google or in the wild, if you will, it's going to take you some time. There is no other comprehensive database out there. So we are here to make it easy through just a 2-minute survey. Further, you're going to see here in a second, not only do we just display the incentives in such a way that says, for your particular asset, here's what's offered at the federal level, here's what's offered at the state, the county, the city, and the utility level. We have a dynamic document that is, you can click different links, and we'll show you an example here in a second. You can click different links and quickly understand eligible equipment. Is a preferred vendor or contractor needed? Does the timing work with your construction schedule? How long does it take to apply? Where is the application? How quickly could you see the funds? Is there enough funding left? Has the funding been depleted? Is there a wait list? I mean, the questions go on, and our report answers it all right there on the spot. Lastly, we don't leave you hanging. We can even help you capture those incentives. Oops, let me go back. For the questions that we get asked as far as IncentiFind, what properties should I bring to you? I've got this one property. Is this a good fit? Here's the best rule of thumb. Have a look at what's on the screen right there. Yes, we do residential and commercial. Have a look at what constitutes as residential sector. But the best rule of thumb of what not to bring to IncentiFind is quite simple. If you have a golf course with no buildings, please don't bring that to us. We are a vertical built environment database. So we need a vertical asset. If it has no buildings, I'm not sure what we'd have in our database that could be helpful. We don't do anything in the transportation realm. So we are not horizontal. The only way we go horizontal is electric vehicle charge stations and flood mitigation strategies as they pertain to an asset being built. So the site location for a vertical asset. Lastly, please don't bring us a non-permanent building. RV parks are a great example. A lot of these COVID vaccination sites that are being deployed as temporary assets, we cannot take those. We need a permanent meter to work off of. So if you've got a permanent building that's vertical, and it's a great start to put it into IncentiFind, and you can do that using a 2-minute survey that we'll show you here in a second. Alrighty, what do we sell to you? And really, if you're with a firm, again, you're not actually absorbing these fees. It will always be passed on to your tenant or property owner or developer. But what are we selling after you submit a 2-minute survey? It's kind of simple, and we like to keep things simple here at IncentiFind. We have one product. It's a digital product, and we'll show you it here in a second. And we have one service. So let's take a dive into what our product is and what our service is. Well, after you submit a 2-minute survey, remember, we've got 24,000 incentives in our database. No, you cannot pick up the phone and just ask us, hey, Grace, I've got, this kind of asset in this part of the country. What do you think I could get? She's going to tell you, sorry, I have not memorized all 24,000 incentives and all of their variables. Please input a 2-minute survey. We rely on our technology to do the matchmaking, right? So pop it into our survey. It's accessible from our website. Once you do that, our technology matches your survey response to eligible incentives. We call that a verify report. We verify your eligibility, right? So you can buy this. And again, when I say buy, if you are with a firm, you're passing the fee on to your owner or tenant or developer. So you can buy this for a single building or multiple. Remember, I said we can look at portfolios. So don't fret if you're working on a portfolio and you're thinking, there's no way I can do, one-off entries for 500 assets or 500 locations. We know exactly how to work with multiple locations. We've worked as high as 1,100 assets at a time. So, rely on us to help you navigate that. So this particular product, again, it's a digital product. It verifies what you're eligible for and displays the incentives and shows you at 5 levels of government what the asset can go after at the federal, the state, the county, the city, and the utility levels. Further, it answers all the questions you're gonna need to have answered in order to know, how do I qualify? How much is it worth? When can I go after it? Does it match my construction schedule? How hard is this gonna be, right? Our one service that we offer is, well, once you know what you're eligible for, it is always the most likely question to follow. And that is, IncentiFind, I don't have time to do this, and neither does my owner. So can you help us capture the incentives? And the answer is absolutely. We will put an easy to click button right there on the verify report that says, we can help you apply. Click this button and we can get started for you right now. Notice we do all rebate programs in-house. We have an entire team that specializes in that. They live and breathe it. They work with every utility company in the United States and Canada. They are all familiar with how to work with them. Further, for tax incentives, no, we don't do them in-house. We are not a financial or tax advisory firm. Don't worry, we're not going to get your client excited and just leave them hanging. If they don't have an in-house or someone, a corporate tax firm that they work with, they can use one of our partners. We're partnered with some of the largest tax firms all the way down to the local lobbyist groups in about 25 major metro areas. So they can click, get me connected to a specialist in IncentiFind. It's a simple button and we can facilitate that. The takeaway should be that we're not here to just identify incentives and that an asset's eligible for. We're here to make it capturing those incentives easy as well, okay? So here's our process. It's a very simple process. It's 3 steps, and it doesn't matter if you have a complex asset, new construction, existing building, portfolio, single building. If it's your first time or 20th time using IncentiFind, if you're an architect or a GC or you're the owner, everyone uses the same 3-step process. It's a great thing because you never are guessing at IncentiFind how to work with us. You fill out the 2-minute survey. You keep hearing me say that. We're going to show you what one looks like here in a second. When you fill out that 2-minute survey about your asset, we're going to send you exactly what you want to know because your client's probably going to ask it. Or if you're that developer, property owner, or tenant, it's going to be what you want to know. How much does a property like mine usually get? What is the normal estimate that I could expect? We send that to you. So put in that survey, get the estimate. Further, have peace of mind that we do not sell any of your survey submissions to any third parties. We don't have to because we monetized our verify report and our apply services in such a way we don't have to sell that to third parties, and we like that. So when you submit something on behalf of a client or on behalf of yourself, it stays between you and IncentiFind, and that's it. All right, after you pop in that 2-minute survey and you get the estimate for how much you can expect on your asset, again, that's a historical average, and Grace will talk about that here in a second on her case studies. You'll see here, our verify report has a $500 fee. If you are with an architecture, engineering, general contractor, or sustainability firm, no, you do not pay that fee. You might pay it up front just for ease on behalf of your customer. About 99% of our firms do, but you better believe they're billing that owner, that tenant, and that developer on the back end, right? So it is a whopping $500 no matter where that asset's located, if it's 1 million square feet, if it's a complex heavy industrial asset, or a 10,000 square foot retail asset. We want to make sure communicating and planning for our verify reports is incredibly easy for you guys, okay? If you have a portfolio, yes, you absolutely get a discount. No, we're not going to charge you $500 for 1,100 assets, right? We're going to bring that fee way down because our verify report should never be a barrier to getting a report that shows your client what they're eligible for, okay? Our verify reports are good for 24 months. Again, you're going to see one, so you don't have to try to imagine that. And you can share it. So once it's purchased, right, you can share that with the rest of the design team. You can share it with your owner. You can share it with the GC. It doesn't matter. It's your data now. So everyone needs to be on the same page as far as what incentives you will be chasing down. Lastly, you can see there on the Verify report, we make it incredibly easy to click a button if you want us to chase down an incentive on behalf of your owner or your client or your tenant. And notice we operate off of a complete success or contingency fee. What does that mean? Let me just take a moment and sit here for a second, because I know a lot of folks have questions about this. Let's say that you're working with a tenant that's doing an LED full fixture lighting, upgrade. And let's just pretend that it's worth the rebate program for the LED lighting upgrade is worth $100. Obviously, it would be worth way more. We're used to dealing with far more than that. But for square numbers, let's say it's worth $100. And your owner or your client is very excited about that. They would say, okay, thank you for identifying that $100 rebate. I would really like to go after that. IncentiFind, I don't have time to do that, and neither does my consultant here. So can you do that for us? We'd say, absolutely. Click that Help Me Apply button. They click that Help Me Apply button. Our team gets to work, grabs the specifications and all other necessary documents, goes and applies to the incentive on behalf of your client, grabs that $100. We take 25, we send your owner 75, because we want to make sure that they're not really touching or have any additional time commitments as far as, the application process. So that's sort of how our success or contingency fee works. Now, we do get asked, well, what happens if my owner ends up value engineering out that lighting IncentiFind? Do we owe you money if you got started on that application? And the answer is no. That's why our fee is 25%. We understand a lot can happen in real estate and construction. So if this particular scope ends up getting VE, you notify IncentiFind immediately. No, you do not owe us anything, right? So that's sort of our 25% fee. Notice it does not apply to our tax incentives. We will connect you to our tax experts. We cannot negotiate those fees. We're not in that business of doing that. You are in great hands with our tax partners and can have a wonderful conversation with them on how they can capture the tax incentives for you. So let's review our time commitment, okay? I'm going to do two stories for the time commitment. Let's say you're a firm that's on this line. What is your time commitment? Well, your time commitment is you're probably going to end up doing the 2-minute survey on behalf of your client or owner, right? Let's be honest. So you have a whopping 2 minutes to tell us about the property, right? You might pay the $500 fee on behalf of your owner, but again, you're going to bill him or her on the back end. You're probably going to want to join this 1-hour call to review the results, especially if it's your first time using IncentiFind. We can certainly do this with your owner or client, but a lot of the times our firms, our architects, engineers, and consultants and general contractors do like to be on the line. So you're welcome to join a 1-hour call. And you might also be on the hook to forward the documents. You might not be, right? An architect might say, get with the lighting installer. The GC might say the same, and the engineer. So here's your total time commitment if your owner was to put you on the hook for it. A 2-minute survey, a 1-hour call so you know what the owner is interested in, and you might have to forward some documents for any incentive that the owner likes, and we are off to the races to apply on their behalf, right? Let's say you're an owner. You are welcome to have one of your consultants or professionals do this on your behalf. You can also fill out the 2-minute survey. We work with a lot of owners directly. Yes, we'd love to have you on the 1-hour call. If you don't know or feel like this is outside of your technical wheelhouse, that's okay. Invite your architect, engineer, or general contractor to the call, and we're happy to have that with them. And certainly, if you're not sure what documents to send over, that's okay. Put us in touch with your professional, and we can certainly do that. So those are the two kind of storylines there for time commitment, okay? Alrighty, before I hand it over to Grace for the case studies and storytelling, we get asked this a lot. IncentiFind, when is the best time for me to bring my project to you guys? Look, we see projects from all over the United States across every single utility company and a lot of local governments. Here's our best practices, folks. The sooner you submit your project, the better. Don't take your time. IncentiFind, we can work fast. I mean, you're talking our turnaround times are quick. You submit that 2-minute survey, sometimes we can have a report back to you in 24 hours. But that doesn't mean that the governments, right, or the utility companies, let's say you're excited about an incentive program or your owner is, it doesn't mean they can have the turnaround that we do. So we've built in buffers to consider how slow utility companies and local governments can be, okay? These are where the buffer should be. If you have an existing building asset and you know that there's going to be a new installation of equipment, maybe a demo, you need to get with IncentiFind 90 days before any wrench is turned, before any hammer is swung, because we need to show the local government and the utility company proof of the existing conditions. They are slow as molasses, folks. So please get it to us. Bottom of the 9th is 90 days. If you deal with interiors projects and you're thinking, IncentiFind, we rarely get 90 days notice, let us know. We'll see what we can do to try and understand how best to support you, okay? But if you can work within that 90-day window, please do so. We can't emphasize it enough. We've seen way too many programs that come less than 90 days and they lose $100,000 in cash reimbursements simply because they showed up too late. For new construction, there really isn't a bad time to apply. Notice in some parts of the country, you can even submit a project 3 months after certificate of occupancy. Here's the bad news though. If you want the most lucrative programs, if you want to access the most lucrative programs for new construction, get it to us during the design phase. A lot of the incentive programs want to be involved early on, and they are happy to open up the checkbook wide open if you come in during design phase. If you don't, they're going to limit the amount of money you can go after. I haven't found a utility company that doesn't work that way. So for new construction and existing buildings, that's why in yellow here we say the sooner the better. I want to give 2 little nuggets of information. Is that what if you're dealing with a ground up asset that's right now trying to strategize on its location? Is that a good time to come to IncentiFind? The answer is yes. We have helped new headquarters identify everything from a tenant lease space where they were looking at 3 different office locations to our developers suss out between 2 land parcels. So they bought two verify reports or 3 verify reports for the office locations. You can absolutely use us as part of that location strategy. So it's never too early to come to us. We're great at identifying opportunities for incentives, okay? So I think that the rule of thumb is there's definitely a bottom of the 9th. It's never too soon to talk to IncentiFind, okay? Again, this graphic is on our website, so you don't have to memorize it. That said, I want to hand this over to Grace Bennett, who's going to talk about our 2 case studies today. And Grace, as you tell the story, just be mindful to anonymize some information and let me know when it's time to click the screen, okay?
Okay, absolutely. All righty, good morning, folks. Let's look at the first project here. So this was one out on the West Coast, Northwest, out in Tacoma, as you can see. So we work with a lot of education facilities, this one being private. Big kicker there is, hey, they're able to tap into certain tax incentives where public schools, of course, usually are not. So that was a good kind of find in that realm. I guess as far as the project itself, so this was actually brought to us by their facilities manager. So this was their FM director or manager on site in the facility. And another kind of caveat or kind of interesting I guess, aspect of this project was that it's also a historical site. So it is on the National Registry of Historical Sites, essentially. So the FM director came to us in the feasibility stage of the project, so very early on, just kind of like Natalie was touching on the timeline, just to kind of get an idea of what is available. So out of that, you can see, out of that report, I pulled together a nice 22, there was 22 eligible incentives. I had a phone call with him and his constituents. From there, we kind of whittled it down to those 9 incentives. And again, this is just really based on scope and kind of what made sense given the timeline of the project and the most kind of pertinent, I guess, kind of scope of work, you know, like if an HVAC was really needing to get upgraded, lighting, same thing, their energy bills were through the roof. So they came to us. That's where we, you know, chipped it down from the 22 down to the 9. Through that conversation as well, I kind of touched on it, that being a national historical site, we were able to tap into certain grants, certain funding on that level. So that was kind of a nice, I guess, unveiling of of an incentive that they were not necessarily aware of, but just didn't know, hey, what does that process look like? It can be very cumbersome. So from there, we were able to kind of connect them to our third-party experts to talk through that process and grabbing some more money to help essentially help out with the funding of the project. So you can see on the far left, the soft estimate that I came up with out of the phone call, a little over $120,000. So very, very healthy. Washington State has very good incentives out there. So once we chipped it down to those 9, you can see on the far right what we applied for: HVAC, lighting, usually the low-hanging fruit. They also looked at water conservation, food equipment for the cafeteria, and then some compressed air rebates. This is all through local utilities and then a statewide program that Washington offers. So almost $50,000 in just cash rebates there. And then looking down below that, that's where I'm talking about those tax-related incentives, historic preservation. There was a sustainability grant from the county. And then, of course, an energy efficiency tax credit. Again, being that they're privately funded, they were able to tap into those tax incentives, which we usually don't see for schooling or education facilities on the public level, at least. So pretty successful. We came pretty close to that. And yeah, now they've moved in from the feasibility stage into the conceptual design and moving forward with those projects. Of course, you know, taking into consideration those extra dollars, cash rebates, and of course, tax incentives on top of that. So tax or financial incentives on top of that. So pretty successful project up there in the Northwest. Next slide, Natalie, please.
Well, I was going to say, I know folks are going to have this question, so I'll kind of ask it real quick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, can you touch, so let me first just define, remember folks, here's the 2-minute survey that was submitted, and historically, we are used to seeing in that region with, you know, on asset types like this, with this particular scope of work, about 123,000 in cash reimbursements. So that said, Grace, can you tell us why there's a little bit of a difference over here as far as what the customer actually captured and why they only went after 9 incentives again? Can you just maybe high level touch on that?
Yeah, it was just kind of what was the most pertinent. Like I said, they really needed to prop up their HVAC system, and the lighting was just sucking their energy, and their bills were super high. So we just really, I mean, we looked at it from a strategic level, I guess, if you will. And that's where we just said, all right, for this time, for this phase, if you will, scope of the project, we're just going to focus on those 9. That's why, you know, there might be some discrepancy between that 123 number and then that 50,000 number on the far right there. Mm-hmm. Basically scope and timing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. You're welcome. Next one, so kind of switching gears, we just touched on private. This is a public, you can see there, publicly funded museum. So of course, no tax incentives are available on the table for this one per se. This is ground up, new construction. And this project was brought to us actually, I told you the last person was the facility manager, the director there, FM guy. This one was from an engineer who was working on the project. And at this point in the project, they were at the conceptual phase. So kind of moving in from the feasibility, they got the capital stacked, and now they're looking, okay, let's kind of tighten up our design. Given the geography there in the middle of Nebraska, the lady came to us and said, all right, what's out there? What's available in this neck of the woods, essentially? So I pulled together that report. I gave her that, you see that soft estimate number right there on the side. That was just kind of, again, based on our historical data of projects similar in size, scope, and function. I pulled together that report. We had a nice, about 21 eligible incentives. From there, when I met with that engineer and a couple of her colleagues, we whittled that down to 7. And this is really, again, we see this a lot. It's just the success rate. I was being very candid with her on the phone. I said, okay, these are going to be the top, 5 or so from the utility. And then these are going to be the top 2 funding, financial related incentives that you can go after. And it was really just based on how successful, how feasible was it for the project. I mean, we had enough time. It was still in the conceptual phase of the design. But again, it was just, does it make sense to apply? That's basically the timing and the success rate was big factors in this one. And also, again, given the fact that it's public, being kind of like a nonprofit, public tax dollars, all that kind of stuff, that's something else that can take into consideration for eligibility. So kind of moving over to the right, you can see that we'd applied and successfully we got 37,500. You can see some of the technologies we went after. Again, HVAC, lighting, kind of the quote unquote lower hanging fruit, if you will, some water heaters, and then EV charging stations as well. So we're seeing those on the rise just kind of across the nation. So they were able to tap into that, a little over 37,000 in, again, cash rebates. Those are year 1 cash reimbursements. And then below that, I was actually, even though they were a public entity, we were able to hook them up with certain financial incentives, not necessarily tax related. I guess I should change that. But there was a savings loan for public buildings like this. And then we also were able to tap into a USDA energy efficiency grant, just again, given the geography and kind of the nature of the project. So that was another one that we, again, came to us through an engineer. We worked through them, presented it to the client, got buy-in, and just kind of chased down those rebate dollars or those incentive dollars for them. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Grace. Those are excellent stories. And we hope you guys kind of heard 2 different personas and especially heard the part, again, if you're listening in from a firm, we can absolutely work through you. In other words, we do not need to take a seat at the table with your client right off the bat. We can, just like Grace showed on that last particular case study, she got all the results, tied it up in a bow, and presented it right back to the firm that brought it to her. From there, that firm wanted to control the relationship to their client, and IncentiFind is able to align to any which way of how a firm does business. And so I just can't emphasize it enough. We do not have to take a seat at the table with your client. We can absolutely act as your ace up your sleeve, or in the background, and reveal those cost savings through you guys, if you're a firm listening in. Real quick, I wanted to show you guys a search survey and how to access that, or what next steps kind of look like at IncentiFind. So, you kept hearing me say a survey, the 2-minute survey. Well, how do you access the 2-minute survey? Here's where you go. You go to IncentiFind.com, hit this little icon over here, and click sign up. Yes, we do need you to put privacy around your account. Remember how I said we don't send this to third parties? Well, we also don't want your surveys floating out there on the internet. So sign up, put a password. Once you do, log in, just like you would create an account at anywhere else, log in. You're seeing my admin view. Yours will have a lot less options, but that's fine. And you come over here and you'll see search survey. That's something we just talked about, right? Again, you won't see nearly as many options as you see on mine, but you're going to click search survey. Here's that 2-minute survey. Folks, these are questions you'll be able to answer. Describe the owner of the building. Is it a tenant? Is it a developer? What is it, right? Best describe yourself, right? You're going to know your own role. Right here, we get asked this a lot, and you can hover over any of these little icons. They're called tooltips, and we'll tell you why we are asking this question. Let's say you're a firm that's listening in right now, and you're working on behalf of Jane Smith, your building owner of, I don't know, that new museum that Grace just showed you, right? Go ahead and put Jane Smith's information right here. Why is that? Because let's say we answer, you input the survey, Grace answers and shows you all the results for Jane Smith's museum. And you go and you tell Jane Smith, hey, we've got some fantastic cost savings available to you, plus these grant programs for the USDA and this one loan program. And Jane Smith says, absolutely, thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. Can I see that? What we don't want to do is have a back and forth conversation to say, okay, well, we need Jane's information. Go ahead and plug that in here. All right, let's get with tech and make sure we give that access. No, pop her information right away into here so that you can send this to Jane when she's ready to have that conversation. No, we will not notify Jane Smith that you have entered a survey on her behalf. Click this little tooltip and it'll say, we don't notify her if you forget any of this, okay? We're going to ask you for the project name. We want to use the same nomenclature you use. Give us the address. The only time address is an issue is when it's a new construction project and there are coordinates. What should you do then? Well, click the tooltip and we'll tell you. But you should try to find the closest physical or US postal address you can. Maybe it's the gas station down the street, the school across the street, or the church down the way. Doesn't matter. Get us within the zip code and you should be fine, okay? Go ahead and select what best matches your building. As you do, folks, questions will pop up automatically. Our survey is smart. Every single question that you are answering is an eligibility question. So pop it in there. If you don't know, answer it to the best of your ability. On the 1-hour call with Grace, you're gonna have the ability to change your response, okay? So don't worry too much, but we can't emphasize enough. Being way off will result in way off results, okay? So really try to answer this to the best of your ability. And you just keep going down the line. Tell us the utility companies. If it's a new construction you don't know yet, that's okay. Put to be determined. That's okay. We'll try to identify it with you. For first-time users, we highly recommend select all in the scope of work. It's not going to hurt anything. Well, let's go ahead and just show you what our database can do. Let us show off for you a little bit. In the future, as you do more and more projects with us, then maybe you might want to just select, very, very specific scopes of work, right? But in the beginning, hit them all. Tell us about your project. Let us show off for you and what our database can do, okay? And the rest of the questions are fairly easy, folks. It's nothing that's complicated. Like I said, from start to finish, you should be able to finish this in 2 minutes. So it's not meant to be a holdup. All right. Oh, it says already. Can you link incentives to lead specifically to lead credits? Oh, okay. Good question, Chuck. The best way I could say this is that any incentives related to lead, Grace, keep me in check here and feel free to chime in. When it comes to lead incentives, we have mostly seen anything specific to lead certification, mostly in property tax abatement, honestly. So for example, lead silver could qualify for like a 5% in tax abatement, platinum 10% or something like that. That's really been the most specific to lead type of programs. At the utility level, a lot of the times the programs aren't called out to align to lead credits, but you'll quickly see in our verify reports how, looking at a report, you'll be able to understand how you're going to get an incentive that also helps to check a lead credit box, if you will. And hold on in the background real quick. Grace, is there anything you might want to add to that while I go pull up a verify report? I forgot to add one to this. Let me go in here and do that.
No, I was just going to touch on the utility kind of aspect of it, which I think you did. Going above code, that's always a good sign. So lead, of course, will surpass code typically. Usually they're in a clear, and we just kind of work through that avenue. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I've got a report here in example mode. If you guys don't mind, I know we're almost at time. I've got this in an anonymized version. Let me just show you what a verify report looks like. Again, this is anonymized, so yes, it says 1, 2, 3, and Jane, whatever, but here's a verify report right here. Here's the 5 levels of government: federal, state, county, city, utility. You get in here, you have the 1-hour call with Grace, and I'm just gonna select things. And she's gonna say, okay, well, I recommend these 3 programs for you. I know you're seeing these none incentives. This is really a peace of mind. We got a lot of feedback from our owners and developers and firms saying, hey, IncentiFind, did you actually check with this utility company? We didn't see that you did. And by putting this here, we are giving you peace of mind to say, absolutely, we check, nothing is offered at this time. If it opens up, don't worry. We're going to be one of the first ones to know, and you can absolutely rely on us for that. So as you go through the 1-hour call with Grace, she'll dwindle that down to a recommended amount of incentives. Notice these are all hyperlinks. Where do they go? They go to details below. Here's the details you're going to ask. Your owner's going to ask. You're going to need to know if you're designing this, if you're consulting on it. Here's the hyperlink going directly to the incentive. Who do you need to call and talk to about it? How do you know you qualify? What is the eligible equipment? How much money are you going to get? Is pre-approval required? What about a preferred vendor contractor? An audit? Notice we are answering all of those questions, and we will walk you through this in the most patient manner you can imagine and give you an estimate for that. So, we're here to make sure that you've got everything you need. There's what a help me apply button looks like. You click that and we're off to the races for you. So again, I can't emphasize enough, this is going to go on our YouTube channel. Let's talk about how we can help you on your next project. And, I know we're past time, but we're really excited that you joined today and are so grateful for the extra minute. And we certainly look forward to chatting soon. Please use the HubSpot links if you have additional questions. Or hit us up at info@IncentiFind.com, and we can also answer your questions there. So have a good rest of your week, folks. We will see you next month, and let us know if there's a case study that you would like to see here for the month of April. Thank you. Bye-bye.